Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special episode of the Define Tomorrow podcast brought to you by Cascade. I'm your host, Barry Coombs, and today I've got a very special guest joining me to talk all about data protection and backup. I'd like to welcome Ian Heppenstall from Druva.
Hi, Barry. Thank you for
Hey,
having
Ian.
me. Yeah. Hi. So I'm Ian Heptonstall. I'm a senior systems engineer at Druva. It's great to be on this podcast with you today, Barry.
Yeah, great to have you on as well. I think there's been a lot of change happening in the sort of backup and data protection arena. I think when we're talking to customers, many customers are maybe feeling some of the pains, but maybe haven't yet thought about should now be the time to be changing their backup strategy or certainly reviewing it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to run through a few sort of standards you should expect from backup. We're also going to talk about sort of the differences between some things like backup and DR, which can often get kind of mixed, mingled, or confused. We're going to have a look about who Druva are and why we at Cascade changed our strategy to fully embrace Druva as a platform to recommend for our customers. And then we're going to have a look at some of the changes that we're seeing within the backup industry to make sure that your technologies that you're using to protect your data today are aligned to the best practices and the modern day standards. So to get us started, Ian, why don't we start a bit of a conversation around some basic standards that we expect people to have inside their environment. So we've got two areas. One is the 3-2-1 backup strategy, which I think, depending on who you talk to, is the minimum standard expected today. But what is the 3-2-1 backup standard? What does it mean, and what should people be looking for?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that, with it being the kind of the bare minimum standard today. The 3-2-1 rule or strategy was introduced by a photographer who wanted to make sure that they had multiple copies of their photos, kind of in the traditional sense of film, and then wanted to store it somewhere else. So then went to digital, and then stored it somewhere else again, then on kind of a USB drive. And that logic has been taken into kind of true data protection. So we look at having 3 copies of your production data. So that's like including your production data itself, then a copy in backup, and then another copy somewhere else within backup. So that's how we end up with the kind of the 3 within that rule. And then the concept of 2 is having it on 2 different medias. So having it on your production is okay. So that could be on standard storage. And then you'd have a second copy and backup stored on another set of disks, ideally on a different set of operating systems, and then potentially another copy onto some media. Traditionally, that was tape. Kind of more akin to today's standards is having it in a cloud technology. And then that's where that 1 is achieved. So that's 1 copy of your data then offsite, should you have a disaster or a challenge with recovering that data from your kind of maybe your production data site with your backup stored there, having 1 copy outside of your kind of production storage. And again, today's standard is cloud, but traditionally that was somebody taking some tapes offsite. And that is still very valid today for that 3-2-1. But I would say, as you mentioned before, is it a bare minimum? I think it is. We're going to talk about a few things today that'll cover off a little bit more as to what we do to protect them workloads at each of them stages through that 3-2-1 strategy.
Definitely. I think some really important points there. And to be honest with you, I still speak to clients, customers today that do not have that minimum hygiene inside their environment. Backup is sat in the same rack as the production systems kind of thing. And a lot of time you've got to think about what are the scenarios you're trying to protect against kind of thing. What are the likely areas you're going to be recovering? So the first one there, at least a 3-2-1 backup strategy. Let's try and move away from tape. We've been trying to do it for God knows how many years, but the cloud kind of being the modern day standard. And that kind of brings us a little bit to the next point. So all around backup encryption or immutable backups. And one of the big things that we see is backup has become the target for the threat actors, for the ransomware deployments that get put out by those threat actors. So talk to us about the importance of immutable backups and probably air gaps in that same sentence as well, really.
Yeah, so when you think of this subject matter, actually tape was a really good way of doing this, because tape was truly
Long live
offline.
tape.
And I'm an advocate from the point of view of what it achieves. So a tape does achieve that air gap, which is having a copy of your backup that is not on your network and not accessible via kind of any means within your network. So that physical separation with the tape really achieved that. But as times have moved on and technology has moved on, we really want to make sure that that is online and available, but not necessarily accessible over your network. So that's really where cloud technology comes into play. And as you've mentioned there, if you get attacked on your production environment, backups truly are a kind of a last line of defense for how you then recover should any data be deleted or compromised. So we kind of have two now industry standards, but I think, as you've mentioned there, getting customers into a mature model of data protection, immutable backups and encrypted backups, kind of the staple now of what you would expect to do within your data protection strategy. And let's start with kind of encryption. It's most people understand encryption. It's the ability to kind of anomalize that data from kind of enter man in the middle attacks or somebody accessing your data without the encryption key. So although they could get to your data, they can't actually access it or use that data in any way, shape, or form. However, that doesn't stop an attacker from then deleting them backups. So although they might not be able to read them and take any data from the backups, they can still delete it. And that's where immutability comes into play. So immutability is the ability for you to protect your backups from authorized users from deleting that data. So when we traditionally look at air gapped, that is protecting from unauthorized users. So anybody that's on your network, can they get access to it without a login? That's where you'd lock it down with a cloud technology such as Druva. But then what happens if they do have authorized access and it's an insider threat or they've compromised some of your account details? That's where the immutability comes into play. And that's the prevention of even authorized users being able to delete that data prior to anybody, kind of your retention policy, for example, deleting that. So I think when we talk about immutability, we really truly put a lock on that data, and that prevents them authorized users from kind of tampering with that data prior to any retention policy phasing out. So you can still leverage your backups for dailies, weeklies, monthlies, but you then can't get them deleted prior to that. And it's a really powerful message to have there. So if you are compromised, you won't lose your backup data as part of that compromise. And I think you guys use maybe some technology as well for production as well as data backup for doing them kind of locks. But it really has become kind of the new standard and a buzzword, but a relevant security buzzword for data protection strategy.
Definitely. Our industry is full of buzzwords, and I think they can often get overused. But I mean, I think at the main point, we're not talking any specific technology at the moment, but considering how you can make your backups immutable and considering how you could air gap those, even if it is the tape, as you do say, it does have its place. If you haven't got
Absolutely.
another way to achieve this, a tape is better than not doing anything at all.
Yeah.
So, and we have seen multiple people that when they are victim of a ransomware attack, the backup server is the first thing to be targeted. If you're using a more legacy technology that relies on an on-premises backup server, and there are ways to mitigate that. Even if you can't change the technology for whatever reason today, you can have a look at your current backup server. You can look at implementing technologies to try and make that more immutable, but certainly you will be able to implement a 3-2-1 backup strategy. It should be automated, it should be air gapped. You need to be able to protect against an insider attack, as you said there, Ian, because whilst you may trust your staff, your employees, what would happen if one of their accounts did get taken over? What could the risk be to your business? So Ian, another question, it'd be interesting just to get your definition on this. An area that some people still get confused about, and some don't, some have very clear understanding, but there are still some people that get very confused, is what is the difference between backup and disaster recovery? Are they the same? Can they be the same? Should they be the same? Shall the twain meet, kind of thing? What is your thoughts on the difference between the two and where they should be needed?
Yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. People understand it, people don't understand it, and actually people that then understand it have different definitions of what they class as disaster recovery. So again, if I take off kind of any corporate hat, my definition of kind of the backup and disaster recovery and the differences are with backup, that is the ability to back up your data and take a copy of that data for recovery purposes under any circumstances, whether that be I've got a file I need to recover, whether I need to recover a server. It sits there as kind of a core principle of any form of data protection should have a backup strategy to then do a recovery of that data. When we go into disaster recovery, you start considering, well, what kind of disasters happen within that scenario? So backup is, I want to recover that data somewhere. Disaster recovery is, how quickly can I recover that data, and where to I need to recover that data? So do I need to consider having new hardware somewhere? So truly my production data center is down, I need a recovery data center, or I need to partner with a partner to have some hardware provisioned or cloud provision to then fail over that service. And it kind of crosses over between them as to how kind of much of a disaster and how quick you want to recover, as to whether it's a disaster recovery strategy or whether it's a backup strategy. And then you throw in business continuity, and then you're actually starting to kind of mix them all together. And I think this is where it's really important that you start trusting partners and service partners to really kind of help you with that, so you can kind of map out and run book each of your disaster recovery plans, each of your backup strategy plans, and actually see where the crossover is, and which one can then help you achieve that recovery mechanism. And we'll talk about it later. There's now another element of this, and that's the cyber recovery side of things. So yes, it is a disaster, but actually it's a different way of recovering that data. Sometimes the recovery time objectives and the recovery point objectives aren't met when it's a cyber recovery, because you're now getting into elements of needing to clean that data. So I think that's kind of like where I see the differences, but I certainly have, over my kind of 18 years in doing data protection, had different views of backup and different views of data disaster recovery. And I'm always interested in hearing other people's views. So it'd be good to kind of get your view on that as well, Barry. What do you see as kind of the differences between backup and disaster recovery?
Definitely. And I agree largely with your points there, Ian. I think they are both important. For some organizations, mainly small organizations, they may be the same. They may be happy that actually, as long as I can go and find that tape and I can put it back, we will be able to recover the business within 3-4 days, and that meets our business objectives. But realistically, with the importance of technology today, recovering from a backup, a whole infrastructure or a substantial part of your infrastructure isn't a suitable requirement. So I see backups being used if you need to quickly be able to recover a file or maybe a VM or something, and also for longer term retention. It's generally cheaper to keep your data in a backup than in a disaster recovery environment. And I've got customers that need to keep data for up to 25 years if they're in the medical industry, 7 years for sort of accountancy and things like that. It can be difficult, it can be expensive to keep that amount of retention inside a highly available, instantly available disaster recovery solution. And that's where backup can be really important. And very much to your point, that DR, how quickly can we get the business back up and running should the worst happen? And one of the key concepts that I'm kind of gobsmacked that when I talk to people, not enough people know about. And I go to kind of ITIL. I'm not a huge fan of companies trying to adopt ITIL from top to bottom kind of thing, but it is a framework. You kind of pick the bits that work for you, you customize it to your needs. But the concept of a service catalog, being able to list all the services that the business perceive that IT deliver to them, matching that through to, as you've already mentioned, the recovery time objectives, the RTO, and the recovery point objective, the RPO. So how quickly you can recover and what data might be lost in the event of a disaster is really important. And from there, you can also put on data retention strategies. You can put departmental owners. So, I mean, some of the worst things that I've seen is businesses that need to recover. And they don't know if they've recovered successfully or not, because they don't know who to ask to see if that system's up and running as it needs to be. They haven't tested it since it was implemented because there wasn't a regular testing plan in for them, kind of thing. You need to kind of have all these in that comprehensive data protection plan, the recovery plan, and also, as you've mentioned, the incident response plan. I mean, I've been doing data protection for 10, 15 years now. I've worked with the likes of the NHS, large retailers, large insurance companies. You need to be considering the scenarios that you might need to recover your data from. And some of the projects I've worked on have even considered things like localized nuclear disaster. How would we manage that? But sometimes it's the more obvious things. It's very easy to kind of protect yourself or think about if there's a fire, or always used to be. I don't know why it's not as much today, but what happens if a plane flew into our building, kind of thing, and stuff like that. But now today, it tends to be more localized problems. So what if 3 or 4 of your servers were encrypted. Does your disaster recovery plan allow you to recover just those 3 to 4 servers somewhere else while the rest of your environment is still running in production, kind of thing? And the amount of times that we've had customers that have only planned for that complete failover, that a partial failover isn't possible at all. So I think
Well,
there's
and I
lots of
think that
moving
goes
parts.
back to the traditional disaster recovery was an all or nothing failover, and that's
Yeah,
how it was designed, and that's why some people had it, because they could afford it. It was an insurance policy to them. But now, when you start considering, well, it's going to be still key systems, but not all your key systems. How do you really do that recovery? Is it the backup strategy that addresses that? Is it a disaster recovery strategy? I think what you're saying before is, doesn't matter which strategy it ends up being, have a plan for it, understand the scenarios and the kind of the dangers that are going to be there for your data, and then how you can recover from each of them incidents. But I think the planning part is the part that I don't think many people do when it comes to backup. They do it a lot with disaster recovery, but they don't do that with kind of, well, I've just got backup, so it'll work. Now,
yeah.
plan out your incidents, see which ones fall into a backup strategy, see which fall into, I can just maybe application availability as well, or do they then sit more in a disaster recovery plan? And I think, yeah,
Definitely.
having partners there really do help who have got expertise in that.
And we've seen some pretty relevant cases recently, haven't we? Obviously, we had the CrowdStrike meltdown a couple of weeks ago, and that wasn't anticipated. It wasn't a fire. It wasn't a massive ransomware attack. It was actually a data protection provider
Yeah,
effectively doing worse than a ransomware attack. All of your machines were
yeah,
kind of locked out from that perspective. So you've got to think about all these different elements. I mean, us at Cascade, as I say, we specialize in this. We've got solutions to cover both DR and backup from that perspective. So let's let's move on to kind of some of the industry changes that we've recently seen with backup. And maybe one, Ian, that you could touch on first of all is certainly over the last 5 years, we've seen this fragmentation of data. So back in the day, I've been on the virtualization journey since it started, right? For us, for my customers, nearly enough every single one of my customers was on backup exec, backing up physical servers.
yeah.
And then they virtualized their servers, and via a few kind of failed backup technologies like Vision Core vRanger and stuff like that we had in the past, Veeam, and its kind of motto, it just works, took over the whole industry as far as medium-sized businesses from what I've seen. And Veeam is a fantastic technology of the era, is my opinion from that perspective. But since virtualization being the core of everything inside your data center, we've seen this fragmentation, haven't we? Data is now everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's, you've hit on quite a few key points there. We had the kind of the physical era, we then had the virtualization era. But what the virtualization era allowed us to do was have data in lots of different locations very quickly. And then as that data then grew, it became important, but it also became spread around not just our data center, but we started then exploring into kind of cloud technology. So we're in that phase now of kind of cloud era. Yes, cloud's been around for a long time, but true adoption of cloud and SaaS applications and kind of modernization of that data hasn't really been as aggressive as we thought. But in the last, what I'd say, 18 months, we're absolutely in that era of the kind of the cloud and the SaaS applications. But what that brought for kind of traditional IT administrators and backup administrators was, how do I now protect that data? Because is that data something that I should be protecting? Do I get it included in my cloud technology? Do I get it included in my SaaS application? And we've kind of had a trajectory of kind of learning and understanding more around these services to decide whether we actually should be backing them up. And I think the answer is always yes, we need to back up that data, but actually, does the SaaS provider, does the cloud provider already provide that? And I think this is where you're seeing different technologies, including the Driver platform and Veeam and other providers out there that are now looking at how they can protect your SaaS workloads and how you can protect your cloud workloads. Because actually, when you really look at the terms and conditions of these platforms, they include a recovery back to yesterday or a recycle bin. It's not really a true backup recovery. So you've got to start thinking about that when you're looking at moving them applications. And for an administrator, that has become a nightmare. It was nice and simple when it was virtualization and physical servers. It was in your data center. You controlled that. You had a single pane of glass for protecting that data. do I now get that still when I move my data to the cloud, to the SaaS applications? And I think the last time I looked at kind of a standard SME business, they had about 40 applications, and a good percentage of them, 40% plus, were some form of cloud or SaaS application. So you're getting into the realms of, I'm not in control of my data anymore. And how do I protect that?
Definitely. And I think that fragmentation, as you say, has led to point fix solutions kind of thing, trying to back up data in different places. And there's lots of very, very good point fix technologies out there. We
Yeah.
could choose, and what most people are doing is choosing what they perceive to be a best of breed approach, but trying to unify your policies, your visibility, to kind of report on where you are across all those technologies becomes increasingly a problem. And I think the point that you mentioned around kind of responsibility, most of these platforms have that dual responsibility model. We'll do what
Yeah.
we can protect your data, but you're also responsible for protecting your data. So whilst these cloud providers will try and do something, you've got to do it. And cloud doesn't sprinkle magic pixie dust on your responsibility or what you need to do. At the end of the day, if that system isn't available, the business is going to turn to you as the IT architect, IT leader, CIO that has made the decision on how to go and do that. So it's important that I think you have a cohesive backup strategy. I think it needs to be easy to manage, unless your job is looking after data protection day in, day out, which I don't see a lot in the mid-market space. It tends to be people that are trying to balance 4, 5, 6, 7 roles and responsibilities, with backup being one of those. You need it to be simple, easy to manage,
Yeah.
and you need to have the confidence that your data is going to be able to be recovered when you need it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And look, it's the right thing to do is consider SaaS applications and cloud applications. Nobody's saying that that's not the right approach. You've got plenty of kind of availability options, scale options with these services. So the right thing for production data, but just bear in mind, it is production data. You've moved it to somewhere that is not easy to manage. So you now need to be able to have a data protection strategy that can protect that workload and that data, and make sure that you're keeping the standards that you had within a data center in kind of the modern world of cloud and SaaS applications.
Definitely. And obviously, there's been some recent changes into industry that I think is further accelerating people's journey to technology, certainly like Azure. Anyone that listened to our recent podcast, VMware have made quite considerable changes to their licensing. I still believe VMware is a fantastic technology, but undoubtedly now there is a premium to pay for using vSphere as your hypervisor, especially if you're a small to medium-sized business. And this is meaning that people are just reviewing what their virtualization strategy is. And the answer to that is some are choosing to use it as a time to accelerate their journey to Azure and to SaaS applications. Some are staying with VMware vSphere as their hypervisor. Others are choosing to move to things like Azure Stack HCI or sort of that Hyper-V. So now is a good time, with so much data moving, with so much increased risk, to go and do that. And I suppose I've inside Cascade, in my role as CTO, I've kind of got a list of all the technologies that we recommend to customers, and next to each of those technologies, I've kind of got a paragraph written down as to why I would consider replacing that technology at some point in the future. I like to make sure that I'm always kind of being open-minded. I'm not sat on my laurels going, yeah, we've got the best technologies for us. And I wrote down some years ago that if we could find a technology that was service driven, so wouldn't have to have a large capital expenditure, that was able to back up and protect workloads across multiple different places, on premises, in the cloud, in SaaS applications, that we could sell to customers as a service, so we could help and support them with that data protection, that it would have to be a technology that we would consider changing what our recommendations were. For many years, that didn't exist. We looked at a number of technologies. Pretty much every data protection strategy that we came to, we measured it against the marks that I mentioned, plus some others. But then along came Druva, and I think Ian and Gareth and the rest of the team at Druva probably went through one of the largest tests that they went through, that we spent a year evaluating Druva as a technology, and I really do feel sorry for the team for what we put them through whilst we were looking to onboard them as a partner. But Ian, maybe you could talk to us about who Druva are, why they stand out in the market, kind of thing, and kind of what your mission is, and why people are turning to Druva.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, not too much of a sales pitch on this one. You've done a great job actually there, Barry, explaining some of the reasons why moving to Druva. But The Druva, we're a complete SaaS platform, so it's fully managed SaaS platform solution offering air-gapped and immutable data protection across multiple workloads such as data center, public cloud, endpoints, and SaaS applications. So we're touching on pretty much everything that we're discussing today in this podcast. And the way that we do that and deliver that is all for you. So we do the hosted platform element. We make sure that you're already in a position that you don't need to compromise on security. It's already built into the platform. And that's a really kind of key thing in the market today, as backup is a target for ransomware. It is a target for data exfiltration. It is a target for kind of anything that's happening within the kind of the cyber threat industry. So the Druva platform kind of protects you in that sense. But then if you go into kind of the next tier of, well, I still need to do something with that backup, why choose Druva at that point? Because Druva is really a single pane of glass for all of them workloads that we've just touched on, the data center, the public cloud, endpoints, and SaaS applications. And with the simplicity around that security, you're able to protect your workloads very quickly in a safe and secure manner, but also then have the flexibility of the cloud and the scale of the cloud to then recover that data in a seamless fashion and just pick out the data that you need as well. So if we take the different scenarios, if you talk about file level recovery and SaaS application recovery, you're able to recover at a granular level. If you take then full VM recoveries, you're able to do that as well. Then you take to the next level around cloud technologies. You can recover EC2 instances, Azure VM instances. So you're able to then recover the cloud technology. But on top of all of that, you can do the security side of things as well. So we can do anomaly detection. We can do recovery of data in a clean fashion. And this is what's really exciting for customers, is because they're not having to kind of go with, or I'll start with only a data protection and kind of throw away security and come back to redesign each time. No, the Druva platform's built with that. And then when we take that data for clean recovery, we're able to use options such as curated recovery and really look into that data, clean the data, and increase the recovery time objective for when a cyber attack happens. So, you know, we've got plenty of features in there that the Druva platform works with, but I think you've touched on kind of the key bits. Is why have the hassle of having to host and manage a backup environment? It should be secure, it should be air gapped, it should be away from your production environment, and Druva provide that in the core base of the platform. And if I kind of flip that back to you a little bit, Barry, and say, you know, have we kind of achieved what you wanted to do as when you took on a new technology? You know, you had a previous backup technology, you've moved into the Druva platform. You know, have we stayed good on the things that we've mentioned there around giving you a secure air gap platform that's then giving you the ability to recover your data for your customers?
Yeah, 100%. I think from my side, I like to simplify technology in everything that I do. I work in technology. I know the advanced concepts, but I really don't like to be getting into advanced technologies where you don't need to. I think our whole industry is overly complicated, especially when it comes to security, certainly when it comes to storage, infrastructure. A whole industry has been built upon obscuring something that could be a lot simpler. So for me, when looking at this, it wasn't a matter of just ticking the boxes. It was, are my customers going to like this product? As if they've had a technology product in, and I'm not one about bashing other people, every technology has its place, but I wanted to make sure that the simplicity of any new technology that I had was there. And for me, it was it needed to be simple whilst putting all those box ticks that I needed in there, kind of thing. It being a service, it's air gapped, it's immutable, it can back up all the technologies from one single place rather than having 3 different products. And it's actually for Cascade, it's been our fastest ever growing product that we've onboarded, kind of thing. So yeah, it certainly ticked all the boxes. As you say, don't want to make this kind of too much of an ad. It is from our perspective. You've got to see it to believe it, and that's why we offer customers a free proof of concept, because it kind of sells itself. We don't need to do a sales job with it. So certainly if anyone is listening, they are looking at this, they do want to review their technology, don't believe what Ian and I are saying, just reach out to me and we'll sign you up for your own version, and you can go play with it and make your own decision from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's where partners really add value as well, because although we're hosting the platform, you've still got to manage your backups. You've still got to do the bits to make sure that you're protecting the right workloads. And because Druva has no access to the customer data, you need a trusted partner to help you with that. And I think this is where the Cascade's backup as a service really does help with any kind of additional TCO elements that you might have, where you're going, I still don't want to manage my backups, I want it to be with a trusted partner. That's exactly where a service provider sits.
Exactly. So I think the final bit that I want to come on to, because this is probably one of the major shifts I'm seeing in the whole data protection industry, and I think Druva is doing quite well in this space, is when you used to talk about backup, it used to be a kind of an extension to your storage strategy. So you've got your primary storage, where are you going to get your secondary place? And that's where the backup technology played. I'm now very much seeing the worlds of security and backup colliding, kind of thing. No longer is it two teams in the bigger enterprises, no longer is it two separate products. You should be looking at your backup, your data protection providers, to also be providing strong security features. So tell us a little bit about Druva's approach to that. How are you adding value around security rather than just that data protection backup piece?
Yeah, so when we first did our very first cloud backup, it was immutable, it was encrypted. So we started a journey, I think it's nearly 11 years ago, with our cloud SaaS platform that was all about security in mind. If we were going to build something that was publicly accessible, we need to make sure it was secure. So we've kind of been on this journey for a long time, and we'd like to think that other vendors are just playing catch up when it comes to kind of a true SaaS offering. But what we then have kind of been doing in the market is, well, we've got the core product, we've got the security immutability, we've got the air gap, we've got the digital enveloping, we've got the data sharding. So we've built all of that into the platform. We've got multi-factor authentication and geofencing. These are all terminologies that security professionals are familiar with. But then that's just locking the data and protecting the data. What else can I do with that data? We're a cloud technology. We're touching the data as we're backing that up. So we've started going on this extensive security element, and actually we've changed our kind of marketing material to the Druva Data Security Cloud. And that's because we're having that data, we're having the metadata, and we can do more with it. So we are really focusing on looking at the gaps between traditional security products that are looking at the edge or looking at real-time information and looking for maybe definitions and changes to do with known threats and ransomware, to saying, actually, well, we're touching that data. You've got this gap in the data view. When we see that data, can we detect more on top of that of any changes that are happening with that backup data? And what we're finding is that when we use concepts such as unusual data activity or anomaly detection, we're able to see additional things that maybe your traditional security products and certainly your traditional backup products are not able to see within that data. And then we can build some more intelligence, some more telemetry for you and your security teams, or just you as backup administrators, to make sure that that data that you are backing up is already clean at the kind of the point of backup. And then if actually we do find a problem or anomaly, we give you the tool set to then react to that, whether that be quarantining your backups, so preventing users from being able to do any restorations of that potentially compromised backup, or going to the next level of actually recovering that data, but cleaning that data as we recover. So we're able to do malicious file scanning, and we're able to do sandbox recovery when it comes to VMware, and we're able to then, which is industry first, what we call a curated snapshot. So we're able to look at several backup points, and that could be the whole of the backup points. It could be, if you've got 30 days, you can look at all 30 days and look for all the clean data and create a new, what we call curated snapshot, or golden snapshot, if you like, of the data, and then be able to recover that data in a clean point, so you don't actually, in traditional backups, go back to maybe the first time that you saw the virus. So you lose 30 days worth of work. You won't lose that 30 days worth of work. You'll just remove any of the problem files and get the last known good of that file within that data. And all that is only really possible with kind of cloud technology, because all of the workload horse, all the processing power is done within the cloud by the Druva platform. So, we're building more. Threat hunting is a key element of doing any form of kind of cyber recovery. So threat hunting is built into the Druva platform. We've got an additional threat hunting coming in the future that's going to make it even easier for customers to find their data should they have a compromise, and look for IOCs, file hashings, etc. So, yeah, it really is kind of a journey, but I don't want to scare people from the security side of things. Is yes, there's a lot going on, but actually it's all made in a simple GUI for your service provider or yourself to manage and understand the telemetry that's coming out of that data. Because I think that's a key part of our education, and maybe you guys at Cascade, is that security shouldn't be such a dark art for people. It should be something that is visible and understandable. And when it's your own data, you know your data better than anybody else. So even if you have the expertise in the securities field, you still need to know that that data is safe and clean, and it's your data that you're going to be recovering. So yeah, we're doing a lot in the Druva side of things, but actually data protection as a whole, you'll see that a lot of the messaging from most vendors is actually more of pivoting towards security rather than it be just about data protection, because that's now just a given, that you protect the data and that you can recover the data. But can I now go to the next level? If I was compromised, is it protected? And if I was recovering it, will it be clean and safe to put back into my environment?
Definitely. I think this is a real challenge, but a real feature set, a real kind of need for people that have these technologies. I think the nature of what you're trying to recover these days has changed massively. I've been involved in helping a number of people recover from ransomware attacks, and it's difficult, right? That you've got so much going down. You've got the stress of a business maybe not functioning. You've got multiple systems that you don't know what's happened. In some cases, you don't even know if the threat actor is still in the environment that you're trying to recover into, and whether you're actually going to end up having to go through all this process again. So certainly when it comes to the point of recovery, it needs to be even simpler than it would be on a day-to-day basis. And I've seen people that are very mature, very well managing of IT during normal circumstances, not break down, but significantly struggle during that immense pressure of trying to recover. So I think it's really important. And for me, and I'm not expecting you to maybe comment on this, Ian, but I think as a whole industry, I think the data protection industry is in quite a unique place that no one else is, because your data is now so fragmented across so many different systems that trying to get insights into all of that data across all of these systems has become extremely difficult. You need to find ways to connect these systems together, and whether that is analytical data, that might be business data. So I see that the data protection companies that are bringing this data together have an immense power in their hands to enable people to do more with their data, which is something that people have always been asked. And what we're seeing here from Druva is one example from a security perspective of what that could be. And I'm not commenting about Druva, I'm not saying it's there, but I think as a wider industry, I think this is only the start of the power of the data protection provider could be giving to the end users and the businesses.
I absolutely agree with that, by the way. And again, take my Druva hat off and just go with kind of what we've seen over the 18 years that I've been in data protection. It's evolved. And actually, there is a real gap in that data analysis. And even when you consider other technology stacks that are able to get some of that data, they focus on the data that they see. Backup always sees all of the data. And I think there really is, over the next 5 years, we're going to see so much more out of data protection vendors that are able to kind of take all of the data, analyze that data, and give the customer and the service partners more telemetry information to do something with that data. And maybe they become almost like data analytics as well as data protection as well as data security. I think you're absolutely right on that. There's more scope in what we do within backup that at the moment is just evolving into the security side. I think there's another step there around kind of touching more of that data and doing more with that from an analytical point of view.
Definitely. So exciting time. So a final piece then, as we sum up there, Ian, why would you encourage people to reach out to us at Cascade to talk about Cascade Backup powered by Druva? What would be your main call to action, I suppose?
Well, I think the call to action would definitely be contact Cascade to have a conversation regarding kind of the service offering there for backup. But I've always been in the industry where backup is kind of pass it to the new guy or pass it to the junior, and it's changing. The mentality is changing. This is really important data. You need to be able to recover that data, and you need to be able to manage that data. And why would you not use a trusted partner to do that? you want to be focusing on the production side of things, and giving time back to your team to focus on maybe what they see as kind of more sexy work. Whereas data protection is actually the key part of any of your data, because you need to recover it, but you often need somebody else to manage that. And I think this is where kind of a Cascade of the world are able to give you that safety, in the fact that you're using a trusted technology, a trusted platform, and a trusted pair of hands to help with that recovery, and making sure that your backups are always protected. But then you're freeing up the time for you guys to then go and focus on other elements of the business that really need IT support.
Fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much to everyone that's listened to the podcast today. If this has intrigued you, if you want to know a little bit more, why not reach out to us to see a proof of concept? We can help to make sure that you're protecting your data in vSphere, Hyper-V, Azure, Entra ID, Microsoft 365, and more. So no obligation, free trial is available. Thank you ever so much for listening to the Define Tomorrow podcast. Ian, thank you ever so much for joining me. Really interesting conversation. We hope we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.